This podcast contains real stories, adult language, and occasional chaos. Some content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised, especially if you're easily offended, overly nostalgic, or still living in a dorm.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dorm Disorder Podcast. As you can see, this is the week just before football kicks off, so we're about to send Dorm Disorder into a little bit of a vacation through the football season. Before we get started on anything, let's not forget to follow, like, subscribe, share. Look, send this to Granny, send this to Uncle, send this to Auntie, send this to everybody you know, so we can continue to grow this Dorm Disorder family. Every week, I'm joined by my co-host.
In the words of Allen Iverson, Bubba Chuck, what's up, Cat Daddy? Dan, 9-4.
And this week, we have a very special guest, my former doubles tennis partner, Rasool Berry.
Yo, that's what's up.
1995.
It's good to be here. Didn't get the memo about the jerseys, but just in case there's any confusion, even though I live in Brooklyn, it's still Fly Eagles Fly all the way, baby.
Go Birds.
That's it.
Go Birds.
On the road to misery.
Yeah.
All right. So we got that out of the way. We want to jump into Rasool right here, and we have a little bit of a difference here. Normally, I start off by asking you how you got to Girard, but we already got that answer.
We did.
Yeah. So how about bringing it in just a little bit from your perspective, what it was like to have that first day, that first arrival, that first prison story, as I hear.
Yeah. So first, shout out to my older brother, Rich, who kind of gave the backstory of just us even approaching Girard. And I think the one thing that is that I thought about that stuck out was the overall sense of enthusiasm that our family had about this chance that we got. It was almost like winning the lottery, right? Coming from a spot where my mom really valued education, our family did, but didn't continue to have the means. We were in a Catholic school, but, for various different reasons, just couldn't afford that. And so this opportunity that comes up was really like this life-changing, moment. I could feel that was the energy that folks had. And I just remember the first day, being in the, junior school. I was in 4th grade. Rich was in 7th, but being in junior school, it was a pretty emotional moment, that first day of school for different people.
Right.
I saw how different folks were reacting. Some were crying, begging their parents to take them back home. Like, wait a minute, you're leaving me here.
Yeah.
Others were cool about it. And I remember I was in section 10 and just being in the bed that night, and I could hear different reactions. I could hear people sniffling, like crying, and just kind of sitting there with myself and being like, this is my new reality.
Right.
I think I'm gonna be all right. I think we're gonna be, and kind of making that moment just stick. I just could kind of adapt to it in a way that some people just couldn't. And that still sticks out in my mind that first night, because I could see the different reactions that people had. In those first few days, that's where I started to really feel the difference, because growing up, I felt fine around friends, family, in a lot of ways I was younger. I was the baby in the family because I was the youngest of the cousins and all of that.
Right.
So I was kind of not so much a favorite, but just loved and supported in a way. When the baby, you get all the attention, right? Because everybody's excited to have you.
I am the baby too.
Gotcha. Well, wasn't that baby Girard? That was not the energy I was getting in my class. In part because, at 4th grade, a lot of my classmates had been there since 2nd grade, 1st grade.
Okay, yeah.
So it's kind of like, who's this new kid? You know what I mean? And so that began a journey of really having to figure out how do I fit in and really being an outsider and whatnot. So yeah, those were my first few days, my memories being at Girard.
Junior school was just a different beast. It just being down there and that close together and all those people in a room, and you were lucky that you didn't, because it was just different. It was really, really different.
Wait a minute, I did though. You got to remember, Banker
Yeah,
Hall.
but you were still in sixth grade, though.
No. But it was Banker Hall on the
Yeah.
top of the junior school. It felt just like that to me. I still had 30 people in my room.
Did
I
you?
still had the same showers you all grew up with. Had the same stuff you all had. I just started it in a different time. So I very much had that experience.
Well, I
to
don't
an
know.
extent.
Now, I would say, I think by the time you got the banker, though, you can go home every weekend. Like,
Well, yes,
and that,
yes.
so part of the dynamic, at least, in my 86 when we were there, was that they would only let you go home like the 2 weekends out of a month, at least when you first got there or something. What was
So it second, third, and fourth grade, it was 1 weekend a month.
1 week in a month, right?
But then when you got close to fifth grade, it
Yeah.
became every other weekend.
Okay.
So it was like first or third, or second and fourth.
Right.
There was no back-to-back weekends.
Right.
You couldn't go home first and second weekend and stay third and fourth.
Yeah, so I was in that
It was 1
transition.
weekend home, 1 weekend.
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And so I know for some people that made a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a big difference from being able to go home every weekend. But in a lot of ways, like you said, showers, which I know is a soft spot for you. And other things, it felt it was similar.
You got clean underwear on your first day, man. You still have me beat on this.
Bruh, I am so sorry you went through that. When I heard that on
No
your
draw.
first episode, that's
Then
rough.
they was too small when I got them, so it didn't even matter.
Yeah. People, man, like don't understand what it's like to have a bundle with your name stitched
A
and
bundle.
glued on your, underwear. It's a different deal.
Your t-shirts and your dress shirts. Well, Wardell was happy to get it because he said he finally got his own stuff. And that resonated. I was like, I was the only child, so it wasn't like, whatever I had was, if it was hand-me-downs, it was still mine at that point. But yeah, I didn't really think about it like I finally got my own stuff. So it was interesting when Wardell brought that up.
So you mentioned when we got this together, talk about this, how that period of time also felt very Lord of the Flies to you.
Yes.
So I found this a really interesting analogy. So why don't you go ahead and explain that to us?
Yeah. So, and it's funny because, Lord of the Flies was a book that we were assigned.
Mhm.
I can't remember which grade.
About seventh grade.
But I remember reading it and being like, this feels like Girard. So in the book, you have the scenario where these kids at different ages, really, elementary, middle school, they get stuck on this island. I think the plane crashes or something. And the whole plot of the story kind of reveals the craziness of human nature. So initially there's a responsible one that's kind of like in charge and he's like organizing the community. But then there's this other one who was actually like the choir leader when they were in like regular society. And he becomes this like crazed psychopath that turns the one half of the group against the other. And it's really like survival of the fittest, right? At this point, it's like whoever's the strongest. And there's a guy, Piggy, I think was his name.
Yeah.
He was like a portly, kind of like not really charismatic, but he was smart. And he ends up getting killed like in the thing because it just becomes anarchy in that way. And there's a lot of that when I think about like just the nature of being at a boarding school where it's like they say the inmates run the asylum.
Yeah.
Because when you go to regular school, 8 to 3, and this is for those who are kind of getting a window into our experience. Whatever drama you have, like you have bullies, you have cliques, you have the cool kids and the outsiders in every high school movie you've seen, jocks, nerds, and all that. But you go home.
You go home.
And when you go home
Every
after
day.
school, there's like a respite. There's like, okay, I have something else to form my sense of identity. When you at Girard, it's like, you go home to the same people. Like it's the same situation.
Yeah.
In fact, it could be more intense because there's kind of more space that you can have to kind of assert yourselves. And so I think for me, it was really something that I sat with because it was like, I felt like an outsider, right? And for those, because there was like a couple different batches of kinds of kids. You had the athletes that could kind of get their identity because they were cool. You had those who were just cool because they had the ability to bring in food or toys or something that other people didn't have that people wanted that made them popular, right?
Right.
There was the Macs, you know what I mean? The ones that were cool with the ladies and that were attractive in that way.
Mac.
I was, the old school word.
Yeah.
I was none of those.
Right.
Like, I was the shortest person in my class, male or female, from the time I got there till 9th grade. Then I was the shortest boy for the rest of the time. I was underdeveloped. I was not good athletically. I wasn't a cool dresser. I had none of those kind of characteristics. And so as a result, it was kind of just rough to kind of find my footing,
right?
And I would say it actually got worse in middle school. I mean, middle school, we got to figure something out about middle school, man.
Yeah. We actually don't talk about how horrible it is in middle school enough,
dude. So there's a couple moments, and this is kind of like therapy. I'm on your couch right now. So, I remember liking a girl in my class, and I thought she liked me because she had tripped over my feet in social studies. This is just to show you how socially inept I was. Like, oh. Now she's like the hottest girl in the class, and I'm like, okay, she clearly likes me. So I work up the nerve to ask her to go to a dance, which was just my easy way of seeing, like kind of making it official, our relationship.
Oh, okay.
So it's a Friday. I never forget this because I tell Taryn, from my class, I'm like, yo, I'm going to ask her out. Right. He's like, I don't know if she should do that. I'm like, nah, this is going to work. She tripped over my feet. Clearly, she liked me. So I go over. So he goes to Merchant to, just to get into the lockers, whatever. I keep walking. We were a few steps behind. Excuse me. I was going to ask you something. She was with some other girl. And she was like, all right, cool. What is it? I'm like, so I was wondering if you would go to the dance with me. She looks at me and says, now, why would I do something like that? This is the level I was on, right? So I go into Merchant and Tara's like, so I was like, I asked her. He's like, no, you didn't. And he turns around and he sees there's tears coming down my eyes. He was like, oh, you did. Oh, you did. So that was rough. But that wasn't even the rough thing. That hardest thing that happened to me.
That's a pretty softball.
So up until this point, I was known as the baseball guy because my grandfather would take us to over like Phillies games every weekend. This was when they were so bad, late 80s, early 90s. They were selling tickets for like $1 to get at the vet.
They used to put them in the daggone packs of hot dogs.
Right. Yes, ballpark Franks.
No, the Phillies Franks.
The Phillies Franks.
You bought the Phillies Franks, they came with a daggone free ticket.
Yes.
That's how we
That's how bad. It's crazy. You buy hot dogs and getting Phillies tickets.
I didn't buy hot dogs. We used to climb in. We used to climb in over the gate at the vet. Just break in.
Yeah. So
nobody was there. We gave a shit.
Nobody cared.
I'm sorry.
700 level. And but they would give out a bunch of stuff like free entice. It wasn't still free, wasn't enough. So I remember I had a Juan Samuel bat. You know what I mean? Wow. Second baseman, shout out. I had batting gloves. I had a baseball, like the batting helmet. And in hindsight, I was a bit like caught up in the fan. Like, so I would do like the Mike Schmidt routine. Mike Schmidt, third baseman, best third baseman of all time, by the way. And so I leaned back, and it was the classic scenario. We were playing, I think, at the soccer field, and bases loaded. 2 outs. The 7th graders are playing the 8th graders, his squad, and I'm like, "Yo, this is my moment. This is it." So first ball, swing, miss, strike 1. Second, I think I don't swing, strike 2. So I'm like, "All right, this is the moment now." For third pitch,
baseball guy.
I swing. And with my eyes closed, I hear the bat break. Now, first of all, why is my eyes closed? That's the first thing. And I open like my eyes and I'm thinking I hear the bat crack. I'm like, yo, I have just hit a grand slam. And I open up my eyes and the ball is sitting on home plate. I get tagged out. And that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was there's all this laughter. It was almost like this comeuppance because like this very arrogant guy has all this Phillies gear on, thinks he's on the team. And I just start hearing the outfield start chanting a profane version of Mike Schmidt. Mike-ish. And then my teammates started joining in. Damn. My classmates. And it was actually, I can kind of laugh at it now, but at the time I was devastated. I remember walking off the field in just tears and then sitting on the parking lot and behind the chapel and just being like, two things. One, I'm never playing baseball again. Like seriously, I had aspirations to be on a team. I was like, I'm not playing anymore. I picked up tennis, which is where we were. But then also like on an emotional level was like, I have to figure out how to survive here. And if I keep wearing my emotions on my sleeve, I can't survive.
Right.
And so literally at that moment, I turned off this part of me that would be very sensitive and cry, which from a survival standpoint served me well in the moment in terms of just being able to navigate. But in life, it was kind of hard to be reattached to that, growing up. And so, having my daughter never really see me cry. She's 27, right. You know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of the aspect of the scars that when I think about that now, fortunately, after middle school, which it can't get much worse, right. It did get better in high school and you kind of find your footing. But man, that was a rough season.
Yeah. So I got to give, I always say that the even number class was assholes. You all had some like the funniest assholes though in your class, like truly some hilarious assholes. So the fact that they laughed at you, in the moment of their fall.
Let me tell you, speaking of funniest, when Keith Dozier came to our class, it was a significant moment. I still talk to him about this day because he would have this squinty look that he would give with his teeth in his mouth, and he would smirk, and it would cause us to laugh at the most inappropriate, inopportune times, right? So yeah, Keith would crack us up. I mean, Jamal was a clown. Yeah. You know what I mean? We had a lot. Speaking of clowns. A couple episodes ago, you mentioned our mascot situation with Ron Marrero, and I would like to give some context about what happened. So, Terrence Snell. So, all right, rewind.
Another little jerk. Little jerk. Let's
interesting dynamic. Interesting. All right. So, you got to start with this. We would, in middle school, when you got there, one of the things to help people through that first night, they would give you stuffed animals to sleep with.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like in elementary school. They was.
I had a pillow, a stuffed animal.
It was, I don't know, it was somewhere they had these. Somehow Terrence got a hold of one of these. It was a clown that we nicknamed Russ.
Okay, yep.
And so Russ, then at some point, because Terrence was carrying him around, became our class mascot. And so we're like, it's just this fun little thing. We're seniors or juniors, it's Russ, the mascot, class of 95. Yay. These diabolical monsters decide to kidnap Russ. So there was this week of they took, where's Russ? Yeah, we got Russ. And it was like hostage negotiations. We're trying to get Russ back from these, just thugs in class of 94. And at one point they came out to the cafeteria with pieces of Russ attached to their lapels. They had ripped our mascot into shreds just so they could wear it around, and there was nothing we could do about it. And we were just sitting there like, I hate you. This is so crazy. So yeah, that was there was but I gotta, in hindsight, give y'all a big thank you, because when y'all made us look like angels. Right. When they graduated, they was looking at our class like we could do no wrong. Like it was like, class of 95. Whoo, and part of that was just in context of what happened before. But yeah, that was, but it wasn't particularly attached to me. It was just like Russ. He was
full disclosure. I was not involved in the kidnapping or anything like that. They came to me and they said, "Dan, we're all putting this on our lapel. This is class of 95's mascot." I said, "Okay, give me the foot and the leg." They're like, "You don't want the stuffing?" I'm like, "No, just give me the whole leg." And I just wear the leg.
And I think that was why it felt like you, because it was like, dang, they dismembered him and he put in the leg. So
no, there was I'm not going to mention names, but he was on the wrestling team for many years. I believe he was involved in the...
I know who that is.
In the abduction,
of Russ.
Of 95. Yeah. So, yeah.
Before we move on, I just want to ask, now that the victim has a name, Russ, do you feel bad at all yet?
I don't feel bad for Russ. I feel bad. I feel bad that it bothered Rasool. When we got older, I was like, yeah, we did a bunch of asshole stuff. So reflecting, as I said, I'm getting older. You kind of reflect back on things and kind of think. But as we discussed on the phone, a lot of things that you're saying, I'm resonating with, because when I came back in '92, it was almost a reset for me.
Yeah.
It was almost a reset, and it wasn't anything in particular. Anyone in the class of '93, it wasn't like all of them were cool. We're all cool now. Clearly, I had some issues with some of them, but I could never find my place in that class. Like I always felt like I didn't belong. Like I said, I'm cool as hell with all of them now. I see them now. It's all friends. It's all hugs. It's all, but middle school years were rough. I remember we did a talent show with Miss Nottingham. Miss Nottingham was very religious. We didn't touch on this, but maybe season 2 we can kind of talk. She took me to one of her churches because I was stuck in Girard, close to a holiday, and she was the emergency house parent. I was the only kid on campus, but we were doing this talent show with her, and there was coordination, choreography, right? We had to dance. And I'm like, I'm not dancing again. Much like you, I never popped again in my life. Like that popping contest was the only time I popped. That was it. So they gave me this one part where I run out and I slide on my knee and stop. Boom. That was it. Dance over. Everything's done. So everyone was getting Todd 1. Todd 1, sweatsuits.
Yep.
They had their Adidas. They had their Nikes. My mom showed up last minute. Like we were literally getting ready to get on in a like polyester 1-stripe suit, which did not match everyone else's. As we talked before, I had on some like Bobos. I didn't have like sneakers that were expensive. And when I slid, because it was like a polyester, when I slid, it belted and burned on my knee, and I shifted just a little bit when I finished, and they all blamed me for us losing. So like from that moment on, there was no coming back. Like it just like that's where I was to them, and that's where it kind of stayed. So when I got out of that class, I don't say got out, when I had to repeat and Saunders let me come back, it was almost like a reset. And I was able to find myself and have my own footing. So up to that second 10th grade year, up to 92, I was not like, I didn't like it there. I just didn't. Even when we got to Bordeaux, it just wasn't a place that I wanted to be. So
I'm so glad you shared that, because I think, in a lot of ways, as I've kind of reflected and thought a lot about just some of that angst and those pain points, even for myself, I've kind of realized that, like, in a lot of ways, it's a weird thing that we all experience outsiderness in different ways, just being at Girard. I mean, even though I knew from the beginning, that first night, that my mom had my best interests at heart and why she put my brother and I there, there's still this perception oftentimes from people is like, did your parents want you even? They dropped you off at this place so that, you wouldn't be there. It could either be that, or knowing what it's like to not have, your parents afford the same stuff that everybody else had, or just in whatever way, that outsiderness, I think, is something we shared in common. But at the same time, I think the trauma of it caused us to have that Lord of the Flies experience sometimes, where it's like, well, I don't want to be the outsider, so then I got to be the insider. And if I'm the insider, I'm making somebody else the outsider. And then that just kind of repeats. But I think that's also something that why we keep coming back. Because I'm like, why? I just feel like Founders Day, I got to be there. Right. And I think there is something that connected even deeper than some of the wounds that are there.
Yeah, the trauma is there, definitely there and connecting. But just to build off that point a little bit, I got bullied pretty rough. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. I'm good enough to the point to be like, whatevs in hindsight. But it was very Lord of the Flies in my class, but it was a weird thing. It was a war of attrition. So all the lords, all those people, all that inside group for my class, they all got kicked out. Yeah. There's a reason why it's only 11 boys that graduated in my class. Wow. So technically, was it 11? I mean, 2 of us didn't walk, still graduated. Right. 2 of us didn't walk, but yeah, 11 of us graduated. It was pretty horrible. But it's unfortunate. I look back at the ones that didn't make it, the ones that were at the center of the badness that eventually got pushed out. And I look at a lot of their lives, and I'm saddened by a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, we had a classmate that just got hit up for a double homicide.
Wow. Wow.
I think it was this year or last year. We have another classmate of mine. I'm not going to call him out by name, but boy, I see you out there. He got out of prison and has made a better person of himself. And actually, I've seen him write on our boards. I'm mad I left. I got kicked out of there. I wish I would have stayed. My life would have been different. So at the same time, I feel like I still reap the rewards of being able to survive my time on the island.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that's something that I've come to appreciate as well. You know, and part of that is just as you grow up, like the very things like that I always say this, especially with a daughter, like who were going through difficult times in high school, and the very things that made you popular and cool oftentimes in high school are the very things that make you unsuccessful in life.
Yes.
And the things that make you unsuccessful in life are the things that make you popular in high school, right? And so, or vice versa, things that make you successful in life are the things that make you unpopular in high school.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that kind of remains true. And in part, and I had this very valuable lesson that I learned. So by, middle school, like we said, it was tough. And, it got better a little bit in high school, but still feeling the sense of disconnection, especially, being like academically oriented, intellectually curious. Not a great thing in an inner city school, even that has aspirations to be a college preparatory school. And so I remember this is when Fresh Prince was like the biggest show. Obviously Philly connection. So that's cool. But to be compared to somebody, and even in our yearbook, it was Carlton, who I was identified with, like the short, nerdy, like guy. And the fact that I played tennis didn't help either. But so I remember, like, and they were like, something like, in the yearbook, like I'm Carlton, like it mentions that, right? So that's kind of like etched in. And so I remember when we got the yearbooks, then you have your, classmates sign them. And when I get the yearbooks back, it was one of the most significant teaching moments in my life. Person after person is giving me props and thanking me for staying true to myself and impressed with my intellectual acumen, and so glad you're going to Penn, you're going to kill it. And I was like, what? I was like, I mean, this is nice, but why are you giving me such a hard time my entire life if this is how you really felt? I legit was shocked that was their perception of me, because it never felt like that. Right. You know what I mean? And I think that was my first taste, and it felt a little bit like vindication, because there were some moments where it was this close to just wanting to blend in with the crowd because it was just the path of least resistance. Yeah. But I remember thinking at that point, like, A, I'm glad that I stayed true to myself, but then B, you don't know what people are thinking anyway. Right. Because oftentimes the desire to fit in causes people to join in to behavior or ridiculing people who are standing apart simply because they don't want to be on the outside themselves. And that's a lesson that has really stuck with me throughout the rest of my life.
Yeah, we would never admit if anybody was like, we just, in behind closed doors, I think we all rooted for each other.
Oh yeah.
Yes. But out in if we're in a group, we're
clowning each other.
Shit. It's just what we did. Middle school, I just have somebody we never talked about, and I do want to mention him, and it's till our hearts be still, is Carlos Noyles. Okay. So Carlos Noyles was in the class of 93, and we were in middle school, and he just picked me to be the person that he was going to continue to fight. So Carlos wanted to get kicked out, and I want to say for 2 weeks straight, he started a fight with me.
Wow.
Every day, 2 weeks straight. And I remember I was walking down from middle school, walking back towards, I think, the Armory, and I see him running down the main road towards me. I got my book bag on. I'm walking with somebody. I'm like, here we go again. So I drop my book bag off. I'm taking my suit jacket off. He's like 20 yards from me at this point. I'm like, I got to get ready, get in my stance, and just get ready to start swinging because we're going to fight again. And he hugs me. And he goes, I got kicked out. And I want to thank you because you were the only one that would continue to fight with me so that I could get in trouble to get kicked out.
Wow.
So we reconnected years later on Facebook. And then I found out he had cancer and he had passed away. But it was weird because it turned into like a kind of an admiration. Like we connected on like this weird level where he was so adamant to get kicked out because his parents wouldn't take him out. And I took that abuse for whatever reason.
Sheesh.
And just didn't stand there. I just said, all right, well, I'm going to have to fight back because I'm not going to continue to take getting bullied. And I felt terrible when he passed away, and I found out, and his sister was running his page. But that's just going back to you brought up middle school and how rough middle school was. And it was kind of like that. And there was a bunch of people in 93 where I just fought a lot. There's just people I just fought a lot that I talk to on Facebook now. Like stuff's cool, but I remember us fighting near a water fountain during gym class. Right after gym class opened. Yeah.
Another thing that changed significantly for me in middle school was in 7th grade, a new student came, Jill Bickings.
I think I heard of her.
And because our names were Bickings Berry, they sat us alphabetically every class.
Yeah.
And I think too, because she was one female, our class was predominantly male, and white, and our class was predominantly black. And she was in 7th grade. I was talking about feeling a little bit out of place coming in 4th grade. She comes 3 years later at the last time you could come. I think she felt like an outsider in different ways. I did. And we sat next to each other every period. So we ended up becoming really close friends. And I think that friendship really kind of helped both of us kind of just survive and navigate through high school and then by 10th 11th grade it's a different vibe, right, with your class. Then you put on the blue jackets senior year and you're walking on Superman. Exactly. That's when you finally arrive. But that was another cool. And then the other thing that's interesting, is that y'all both married Girardians.
Yeah, stop. Yeah, he made it seem so weird. This gave us the Spider-Man fingers.
Like, that is interesting. Like, I gotta think because women just started coming in and graduating in 93. That there are many couples.
Well, let's double down on that. Yeah. So Nicole and Jill and myself all came in the same year. 1989. We all came that same year. So It was something by 89 then.
Yeah. So that and I think that was a part of the turning point too of just being able to find our footing and appreciate. But the other thing that I think it has shaped me in a lot of ways is the way I think about race. And this is another really fascinating thing about Girard, right? Because you have the school that was founded for poor white male orphans in the will, explicitly in the city that is known as the hub of the Underground Railroad, like literally where Harriet Tubman, dropped off folks and herself, escaped to freedom. And so this city that's attached to liberty and equality and all of these things. And so you have the desegregation move that happens in the 60s. And then by the time we get there, now it's predominantly black.
Right.
And
predominantly black, but also the whites that are there, white flight is beginning to happen. So we talked about this and dabbled on this on other episodes.
Right.
If you look at the period from like when I got there in 89 up until like I graduated in 96, the number of white students that leave Girard is a lot higher than the number of white students that are coming.
Because the Partners Without Pools place.
They stopped working. They stopped doing their thing. They were like, nah, no more.
So the thing that's really interesting is in a lot of ways, and then of course you have the teachers who are predominantly white, and then the house parents.
And the number of them that were Jewish is actually a little bit. Yeah. I didn't even realize that growing up. A lot of our teachers were Jewish.
So I think that was just another interesting layer to me because I end up majoring in Africana studies and sociology when I get to college. And I think in part it's that outsider dynamic, right? Like I'm fascinated to understand how groups work, how these connections work. And then on top of that, I get more exposed to Black history when I'm in college than I did in high school and middle school. That just wasn't a key, essential part of the curriculum. And in the midst of that, but I never forget because I thought when I got into Penn, I thought, okay, Black students make up 5% of the population. that's going to be fine. My best friend is white, and all my favorite teachers, you know what I mean, many of them who shaped me, Lee Carpin, you know what I mean, Kazimple, all were white too, so I'm gonna be fine. Like, and what I realized is Girard is a different place.
Yep.
In terms of its sensitivities to how you are seen as people across racial dynamics, right? And so I kind of end up being shocked by the fact that the ignorance that I saw externally was
real and right there in front of your face.
Different. Like I was like, oh, I was living in a utopia.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Compared to how the outside world works, and that really prompted me to like really kind of understand American history different than some of the things that I didn't quite grasp before, but it also gave me a greater appreciation for where we were because we were like brothers and sisters, across, the spectrum.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on this a little bit because I have the exact same experience. We have a lot of weird, interesting experiences, some that we are not going to talk about on this camera, but I had the exact same experience at college. So I did not go to Penn. I wasn't that smart, but I did go to Virginia Tech. And that was my first time being in a real white majority life.
Right.
And I thought I was prepared for that. I'm a military brat. I wasn't even born in this country. I've grown up around white folks my entire life. I would later be married to a couple of them, but I thought the outside was going to be different. And then when I went to college, and Virginia Tech was probably 2% black, lower than Penn. Like if you could go a whole day without seeing another black person at Virginia Tech. But we all were roommates.
Right.
Another story. And we had a field in the middle of campus called the drill field. And if we used to have an unspoken rule, if you walked across the drill field and saw another black person and didn't give them at least you was othered as a black person because that might be the only one you see that day.
Wow.
So I do think that leaving Girard and stepping into the world was a cultural shock on a lot of levels. But it did toughen me up to be able to deal with them. And I was definitely able to connect with my peoples, whoever my peoples were at the time. After that, but continue. Sorry.
Well, I'm kind of curious about how that was for you coming out, just on as a white brother coming out.
It's a tea all over again.
It is. It is. So I'm gonna take us back to 1990. We're in the cafeteria. There was a table that had a bunch of white students at it that all sat together. And I played on the soccer team with a lot of them. So they called me over. They were like, Dan, sit right here. Sit right here. So I sat down and I'm eating, but I'm looking around the room. Right. And I see this table of white students in the middle of the room and everybody else sitting, not at that table.
Yeah.
There was not a black person at the table. So I'm kind of looking around. And I'm like, yeah, that was the last meal I had at the table. And not because I didn't like them and not because I didn't get along with them. I felt weird sitting at that table. So, I get to Temple, I get to Fort Leonard Wood, I get to when Fort Leonard Wood, I started hanging out with the gentleman from Florida, dude from DC, dude from Delaware. All minorities. That's who I was hanging out with. I wasn't hanging out with my man from Kentucky or whatever. I just did not resonate. So when I got to Temple, how I speak sometimes, how I act sometimes isn't considered how I'm supposed to act.
Right.
So I always felt uncomfortable. If I said this, and it's not anything negative to my race. Right. It's not. I feel like it's a gathering and not just a coincidence that we're all in a room. Like if it's just one race in a room, I look around like this is weird.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of leave. So it's kind of how it was at Temple. There was people who looked at me in class if I answered a question, just by how I speak, but I speak because this is how I speak.
Right.
And we touched on this with Atia. There was a student, Robert Holloway. I was in 3rd grade. He was putting a wave cap on me at night.
Love it.
Like literally put a wave cap on me. I'm like, all right, wave cap on. I would go to sleep, take it off in the morning. And this is when I was taking a shower in the morning and not at night. Right? Because I thought my mom don't watch me take a shower. I don't want to get back into that. But culturally, that's how I grew up. So when I left Girard, I didn't leave that behind.
Yeah.
It's kind of just how I was.
I always had this like internal joke in my head that kind of described this experience. I was like, we seasoned our white people. we put some Lowrys on, you know what I mean? So like, you know, and it's just part of it is what happens with a culture when you put any minority group of people into a context that where there's, you know, another culture, they get exposed to that, right? So one of the things I love about that was, you know, like Jill comes in at 7th grade, she ain't know nothing about hip hop. By the time we graduated, on each side of our yearbook, I have, you know, On Point Jill, and then she has All the Time Soul, and it's just like, that's right, because Tribe was it, and that's what you're going to get exposed to when people are like, you know, when that's the surroundings and the air that you breathe, and I think that was a cool part about the culture there, oftentimes unspoken, but just like present in a way that I've also grown to appreciate was very unique, in a very racially polarized world.
My wife still thinks mayo is spicy. And moving on. So we hit on a bunch of themes here. You told us a story that I definitely want to bring to light. And it was truly one of my favorite house parents. Before we jump into your story, I'm going to tell you why he's my favorite house parent. And this is Mr. Neba, who became Dr. Neba prior to your class graduating?
Yep. Yeah. He was Dr. Neba by the time. Yeah.
So he said he had a nice big party when he got his doctorate. Like, you know, a bunch of people had it. He was also on the 3rd floor of Bordeaux Hall on the back end.
Yes.
Okay. He had a nice party. He had a lot of beer. He had more beer than he could keep in his apartment. So he used our student refrigerator out in the hallway, but kept it locked behind a door. Anybody with a butter knife could get into that refrigerator. We found a case of beer. Thank you, Dr. Neba. We celebrated your doctorate as well. So, but you have this great story about him. And not that one, the other one.
Well, okay, all right.
Yeah,
I'm like, got
yeah.
you. So yeah, for a lot of different reasons, Dr. Neba had a very significant impact on me. One, it was the first time I'd ever heard of the nation of Cameroon. I think he had given Mr. O'Rourke a camera. He had greetings from Cameroon on the bag on his door. Oh, wow. So I remembered seeing Cameroon and thinking about it. And so I ended up choosing to study abroad. And when I was in Cameroon, partly because French was mandatory. So I had picked that up and Mr. Karlowski's class, which by the way, my brother asked what my French name was. It was Luc. Because this was during Beverly Hills 90210, so Luke Berry, like Luke Perry, so a little, you know, Luke. Karlowski, that was a shame what they did to that man, Karlowski. But
hell with that dude, man.
He would crack me up because he was like non-volunteer time.
Yeah.
And he would always get Jill because she would never volunteer. He would like, we would wait for it. Janine.
Non-volunteer time, Janine.
So any case, that's sidebar. So that was why I picked Cameroon, because it was a French-speaking African country. And I told Dr. Neba I was planning on going there. He actually came to to my going away party at the crib, which was cool. And so this is one of those providential moments in my life where I'm like, okay, this is not a coincidence. Like so I'm in Cameroon. I didn't tell him, he knew I was going to be around, but whatever. I mean, it's a whole country. He didn't have my itinerary.
Right.
And it's about the size of Texas, Cameroon is. So I'm in Yaoundé, the capital, and one day I'm meeting up with somebody who happens to be late, which happens a lot in Cameroon time. There's something called African people time, which is a more potent version of CPT, right? Like we often come 30 minutes late. They'll come like 2 hours late to something. So in any case, I'm sitting there just at a random bus station, waiting for somebody, and there's a bus, and I turn over and it's Dr. Neba, the one person I knew in the world from Cameroon
Is on the bus
in Cameroon. I'm like, Dr. Neba. He's like, Rasool. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. So we end up exchanging info. He was going his way to Bamenda, his hometown.
Right.
And so I end up later in the trip when I got to Bamenda, called him up, visited, we hung out in another country, and I came to love, Cameroon by the end. I was there for 3.5 months, and just really left an incredible impact on me. It was, I would say, the best education that I got while I was in college the whole time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was something. Shout out to Dr. Neba.
Yeah.
So quick Neba story. So I'm sorry, Dr. Neba. He was not doctor at the time.
He wasn't doctor yet.
He would tell students that he got here by swimming from Cameroon.
Oh hell yeah! All the time.
How'd you why'd you come here? He's like, I swam. And that's all he would say. I swam. And then in 1990, World Cup was going on, and this was the time of Roger Milla. So me and Mr. Neba watched a couple games. We watched Cameroon game while they were playing, and Roger Milla, and there was another person, but they got to like the knockout stage, which is like 16 teams left or 8 teams left. They went really far that year in the World Cup. So I got to spend some time with him and talk soccer and all that stuff with him.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
That is. And I think that also reveals the other thing that was great. Even in the midst, we talked about the outsiderness. There was something about Girard that it gave us opportunity for growth, right? Like I had never thought about going to Penn. I never like that until somebody from the university came and visited our campus and said, this, and I had teachers that believed in me to do it. It was funny when you had mentioned another episode about like how Mr. Leak, rest in peace, would just assign people to it was kind of a racket. Like it was like, oh, you want to play basketball, cross country. You want to play baseball, cross country. You want to do track, cross country. But so I ended up, running cross country, and I was terrible at it. I remember I had to wear high top because my ankles would hurt, like for running 2 miles, because I had never run that distance before in 7th grade.
Right.
By the time I was my junior year, I was placing in races. Now we had that. We had Keith Dozier, Kevin Sharp. Yeah. We had some gazelles on the team. All state crazy. Yeah. But I wasn't on that level. But I was a tier underneath, and it was that sense of belief. And so I remember thinking, like, first of all, anybody who really wanted to set their mind to it, like when I got to Penn, I was like, oh, half my class could have come here. Like this, it wasn't, it was a matter of like diligence and who was kind of locked in and focused. But the environment and the safe space that Girard gave you to actually even achieve, or at least have that on your radar, stuff that wouldn't have been on your radar, and have people who just straight up believed in you and sometimes wouldn't let you fail, even when you wanted to, right? Like where else could you go where like somebody's knocking on your dorm room at 8:30 if you're not in class? Like, because you just like, yep, you got to get there. And so that kind of safety net and that support that we received. I have this picture because I was on the, newspaper, team where these teachers like Ms. Zelinsky and others, Watson, like, so like they're literally like surrounding me as I'm like working on something. And that picture just always was kind of like a symbol of the type of support that you're surrounded by, in a way that I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have got this, if I would have went to my zone school and whatnot. So, and that really has shaped me in a lot of different ways, moving forward, the work that I've continued to do.
This concludes part 1 of this episode. Please stay tuned next week for the conclusion.
To the cafeteria with pieces of Russ